This is just going to be a quick video on how to use source generators to clean up some of your code. So in my last video I talked about this section of code here where I use reflection to load a class that's defined in a JSON file. So like this script class might be called, the troll script, and then that will dynamically load this troll script class, which implements this interface. And I actually had a conversation with someone in the comments about making this better by using source generators to make a factory class. So thank you, Mark, for the idea. So the end result, I'll be able to replace this block of code with this one. First things first, I'm gonna create a new source generator project. I'm gonna call it NPC script factory generator. And source generators have to target .NET Standard 2.0, so that's the only option. In the CS project, I added a couple things. I added the code analysis analyzers, code analysis C#, code analysis net analyzers, and these are pretty standard for a source generator, so you can just use that. One super useful thing, I'm targeting net standard 2.0, which by default gives you a super old version of C#, but you can just add lang version latest, and as long as you're not making some library that other people are using, you're using it internally and you know what language version you support, so you can do this. All right, so now we can implement the generator. So I'm going to call it NPC script factory generator, and it's going to implement incremental generator. If you see docs or an example that uses source generator, just ignore it, run away. Don't use it, don't think about it, don't look at it. Yeah, don't use it. And what's nice is there's only one method, initialize. I forgot one more thing you have to do, is you need to label this class a generator. So the first thing I want to be able to do is get all the classes that implement my interface. All right, so here's what I came up with. So to get the NPC script classes, you can create a syntax provider, and then you can provide it a predicate. And so that's like basically a filter. And so I grab all of the syntax nodes that are class declarations. The transform is where I convert the syntax node into the iname type symbol. This is every class declaration in the project. I convert it to this iname type symbol, and then I check and see if it implements my INPC script. And then I check and see if it implements my INPC script interface. And if it does, I return it. Otherwise, I return null. And then I filter out all the null symbols. This .collect is going to package up all the classes that we're returning, the symbols that we're returning, into an immutable array, and then wrap that in an incremental value provider. So this incremental value provider is going to be the thing that gets hooked up to the code gen. So basically, when this list changes, you need to regenerate this code that we're going to be generating. And that makes sense, right? If you're making a factory method that's got all of these classes in it, and then I add a new one or I delete one, you need to update the factory method to either add or remove one of those classes. If this list changes, code generation will get triggered. All right, now we can do the actual code generation. And so I did it in just a super simple, basic way. There's much fancier ways to do this. I'm pretty sure this works and is like cache efficient and all that. Basically, if you do too much crap in here, your builds will get slower because you're doing unnecessary code gen. So, you do want to be like moderately efficient. Yeah, let's walk through it. So this context is the context you get in the initialize. We can register a source output, which basically, if we look, it takes one of the overloads is it takes this immutable array of name type symbol or incremental value provider of array of name type symbol, and that's the source. So these are the source symbols, and then it takes an action. So basically just a function of what are you going to do with this value provider. And this is our list of symbols. So this is our NPC script classes. These are all the classes that implement INPC script. And so once we're in this context, we can just generate some source. We're finally at the part where we get to generate code. I've seen a lot of different ways to organize this, like builder classes or just like string literals or whatever, but I think a string builder is also fine. Probably not the most efficient, but whatever. At this point, you're basically writing code, but in strings instead of in text. I think there's also libraries to help you with this, but this was going to be such a simple example that I thought it was okay. So this should look super familiar. You know, I got some using statements. I have a namespace. I could actually convert this to be a top level namespace declaration, so I have one fewer indent, but whatever. I have my public static NPC factory, and then here's my static function create. It's returns an INPC script. It takes a class name, takes a logger factory, and then it does a switch on the class name that you provide it. And here is the, you know, this is really the meat and potatoes of the code gen, right? So I can loop through all these symbols, and then I grab their fully qualified name. So when you do code gen, you want to use the most verbose name that you can so that you don't need to worry about conflicts. Code gen code doesn't have to be like beautiful and readable like your other code. Not that my code's always beautiful and readable, but you know, it's more important for your code gen code to be, you know, accurate and fast and not break, because that's really confusing. So for each symbol, I grab the fully qualified name of the symbol, and then I append another line here, so this is another case in the switch. For this symbol name, I new up this symbol. So this is going to be whatever class. And then I have my default case where I throw an exception. And then this last part is probably the most important part. I take this source production context, I add a source, I give the file a name. You want to have it be a .g.cs. I actually don't know if this is required, but it's definitely the convention that you mark things as generated that are generated. You don't want people editing generated code. And then I do a source text from, I put out the string builder, and then I encode it UTF-8. So that's it. Let's see it in action. So to use this, we need to put a reference in the grains project. So the code gen I want to happen in the grains project. So we need to add a project reference to our source generator. And the only special part is output item type analyzer. And once you do that, you should be able to do a build, because this doesn't rely on any kind of attributes or anything like that. So it should just magically work. All right, and that succeeded. So let's go look at our NPC grain. And you can actually see, hey, look, this NPC factory create is actually valid code now. So that means I can delete this. And we can F12 in here and take a look at what it looks like. So public static class, NPC script factory, public static INPC script, create. I mean, it looks exactly like we wrote it up. And this is what I was talking about with the verbose naming. So this is the fully qualified name of this script, is global grain scripts troll script. I don't write code like this, but in a generator, it's a really good idea too. All right, so here's the cool part. I've got this new script, and I want it to be an INPC script. So I'm going to implement this interface, and then watch what happens to the generated code on the right. So before I'm even done implementing the interface, the code gen has already run and seen that the list of classes that implement INPC script has changed, and it regenerated our code. And here's our new switch case. And now this code doesn't even compile, but it successfully generated this code. All right, and so here's the final code. I cleaned it up a little bit more, where I pulled all the like callback subscriptions into a separate method. So I create the script. If I created the script, that means I have one. So I register all the callbacks, and then I start the script. So yeah, this is the code, and it was super easy. It probably took me like, I don't know, an hour and a half or something like that to write. And now every time I add a new kind of script, it will just show up in the factory and I can just make it. Source generators are super powerful. I really recommend learning how they work. I recommend using them. You can start with something simple like this, where all I want to do, get a list of classes, put them in a switch, make a different object based on what class it is. Very basic stuff. You can get so much more advanced with this, but I think even starting at a basic level, it can really save you a lot of time and a lot of headache.